Hello, this is Harry Paden. I am the host of Paden's Pulpit. This is Season 2, Episode 41. Today's subject, Native Indigenous People, i.e. the Osage people's history. Season 2, Episode 42, today's subject, Native Indigenous People, relating to the Osage, O-S-A-G-E, people, and some history. I am a revisionist historian. The word revisionist is a simple word that is simply revisioning the history that has been taught to us, told to us, injected into us. I was fortunate at an early age. I started to get correct information, and the more information I got that debunked some of the myths, Africans are savages. There's nothing good in Africa. Once I started getting the correct information, it really piqued my interest for information, and I've been on a journey. And that journey has given me a wealth of information. I could return to any school now and get a degree in history, but there's no need. Mine is a self-degree. I degree Harry Paden, Dr. Paden, revisionist historian. This is a story I call what some people call Indians, some call them Native Americans. I look at doing things correctly. They weren't Indians because they aren't from India. They were not Native Americans because this was not America when they lived here. It was named America by the colonists after they came and did what they did. So I call the people so named as I mentioned Native Indigenous. They're native to this country and they're indigenous. They were here before any of the explorers or even people. There's a great history that talks I did last week about the Africans that came to this country. That's episode 41. But today, there's a movie out. I highly recommend you see it because it gives you more. I'm only going to give you a tidbit because I don't want to spoil the movie. It's called Killers of the Flower Moon, written by Martin Scorsese. Robert De Niro stars in it, Leonardo DiCaprio, John Lithgow, Brendan Fraser, and a host of other stars that you'll recognize by face, if not by name, and a great cast of Native Indigenous, I'm going to say Native American, Native Indigenous people, who may be Native Americans only because if they're born here, they are Americans. But in 1923, similarly, around the time of Wall Street, Black Wall Street, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. This took place in Oklahoma, a different part. It was on the Indian reservation. The Osage people, Native Indigenous people trying to live peacefully. Of course, their lives were disrupted by the colonists, like many other people. But what happened is, like the Clampets, they found oil, black gold, Texas tea. And as a result, they became rich. They earned more than $13 million in revenue because the oil was on their land. So the money was theirs for, selling the oil. Now, of course, the United States being the United States, Under the Osage Allotment Act of 1906, all subsurface material within their nation, the Osage Nation in Oklahoma, were tribally owned. Means that if I find money in the ground, it's mine. They found oil, it belonged to them. So the United States said, whoa, that's a lot of money, Mr. Indians. That's what they said, Indians. So let us hold on to your money because, we know what to do with it. So they held on to their money in a trust. And as a result, many in the tribe became rich. Some of the richest people of that era. And as it goes, like in all things, if I'm rich, my children could benefit if I leave it to them when I, go home to glory. So such was the case for the Native Indigenous people of the Osage Nation. Not getting into details, but one of the Europeans had an idea. He said, wait a minute, if it's inherited by the children and husbands, y'all, come here, I got a plan. You go marry that squaw, you go marry that squaw, and you go marry that squaw. Because everybody liked the white man, Hey, I'm only being truthful. And that's what they did. They set up a series of marriages, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Quite ingenious if you ask. You want to not work, marry a rich woman, and let her die. You're rich. Not my way, but that's the way some people are. So this scheme sounded great, but then you had to wait for the woman to die, and these were some young women, They weren't no old women, they weren't spinsters. So what the mastermind, his name is William K. Hale, Hale, he got people to do that, and he then, because he was rich, he systematically had certain people of the natives who had money killed off. You're waiting for them to die through some mysterious ways. It's all depicted in the movie. And the natives, not being stupid, why did Uncle Tom all of a sudden die? Aunt Minnie died too. And Cousin Jeb, they started having people dying, without reason. Okay, they all use words like suicide. If you got millions and millions of dollars, most people ain't committing suicide. Long story short is that the natives got together, and their government, they've always had strong governments that work together, though they fought like all governments, but they worked together as various tribes, and they got together the council. And what they did, it was the Osage Tribal Council. They went to Washington, like Jimmy Stewart went to Washington. And they said, Mr. Government, somebody's killing off our people, and the government dismissed it for years. Oh, get these savages out of here. But they kept protesting, showing up, making life difficult, almost the same as what Dr. King and the Civil Rights Movement did. They said, okay, what we're going to do, we're going to form a task force, and we're going to go down there, and the task force formed was the U.S. Bureau of Investigation. It is now called the FBI. The FBI was formed because they formed a group to investigate the killings on the Osage Native Indigenous people's land. Didn't know that? Now you know that. The FBI was formed, and they went in and started investigating, and guess what? They found that these natives were telling the truth. There was no explanation for some of the deaths. Some of the deaths, when you start questioning certain people, you found out how they died, because a lot of people can't talk to the police, and like, what? And When they investigate, they say, you can get away. Just tell me what you know. See, that's me. I tell them everything. Don't ever tell me nothing. But in the end, they exposed this ring of terror, killing these people for their money by William K. Hale. He convinces his nephew had served time in the war, wasn't on the brightest part of the thing. He just convinced him, and it's so much of a shame. The movie shows how he duped him and got him to do things that he might ordinarily not have done. He was part of it. And in the end, several people went to jail. In the end, justice was served, but then it wasn't served because William K. Hale, as the ringleader, was given a pardon by one of the presidents, much the same as that Donald guy. You know, they like crooks because they're crooks. So years later, much to the dismay of the Osage people, William K. Hill was given a pardon. He lived his life out, and it's depicted in the movie, in a nursing home. But when he knocks on the pearly gates, God doesn't forget. The Osage history is American history. They're Native Indigenous people who were systematically destroyed, much the same as Africans. Not African American. We are African Americans, but Africans, by the Europeans who thought everything they saw belonged to them. We still have wars for that reason. I am a historian. I love to find out things. I write many of these things. Many of them are found in my book, and it's kind of comical when people don't buy my book, because it almost seems like they think they're hurting me, but I have the knowledge. The things I put in my book, I know. My children know. My children's children know. And sometimes knowledge is what, lack of knowledge is what decimates a person. They just don't know. They don't know the fight that many had to do. I'm going to try to find that book. This book here, I have several chapters on Native Americans. You can also find in this book from my library books on Native Americans written by Native Americans. I'm trying to find this hard because these are not reading glasses, but you can do your own research. You just have to Google, and certainly you can find information on the Native Americans. Thank you very much for watching this podcast. I encourage seeing the movie Killers of the Flower Moon. It's in theaters now. It's 3.5 hours long, but it's historical. I saw interviews by descendants of the Osage Nation, and they said Martin Scorsese is the real deal. He didn't whitewash it. He didn't, make it where it wasn't true. He said he told the true story as best you could in the movie, because it has to have drama. It has to have a certain. But this book, one of my books, also has information. I don't try to hawk my books because, I consider them valuable. You don't want it, that's not okay. That's not a problem for me. To God be the glory. Continue to use education as a tool. That Ron DeSantis guy, he takes it out of the schools. Well, you can't take it out of your home. So why you're crying about that? I mean, of course we don't like it. But if he take it out of the homes, I'm just saying, to God be the glory. Knowledge is